Welcome into the DNVR Avalanche Podcast. That's AJ, that's Eric, I'm Rudo. Look, we have compared the top of this Avalanche core to Sakic and Forsberg, even Hayduk, the old core of the Avalanche, a lot. But we haven't
Holy Trinity Part 2.
Yeah, basically. But we haven't compared them beyond that all that much to some of the other greats, the Hall of Famers around the NHL. And we have Eric here, who's happened to play with a handful of Hall of Famers that are pretty good. They're okay.
They're okay. They're okay.
So I figured we'd take a look at this and see, obviously, their careers are far from over, but how they stack up against some of these all-time greats that are out there and what trajectories these players are really on in the NHL. So I wanted to start very simple, without thinking too hard about it. Nathan MacKinnon, what's the first comparable player that comes to your mind?
He's thinking.
Yeah, don't think that hard.
Yeah, I don't think he's as good as Sakic and Forsberg were.
I agree.
And his combination of skills, the power and the speed that he plays with, it's not something that I remember.
It's fairly
a
unique,
lot of,
for sure.
From the 90s and early 2000s. Usually guys were strong or guys were fast. To be both was
unusual.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm having a hard time on it.
Well, I can help you out. I mean,
You pop off.
Yeah. But you say, Sakic, Forsberg, you're right. I agree.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's the consistency of those two.
Yeah.
And we talked about it yesterday, and forget about the style of players. Obviously, Joe was different than Peter, and obviously Nate's different than Joe and Peter. And but they're elite. They're elite, and all three are elite. But I think for a span of 10 years, Joe and Peter, I don't understand how you produce like that. Like, it's absolutely crazy. And then you reach, obviously, the ultimatum. Not the ultimatum, but the ultimate goal in '96 and '01. But They've been to the semis, right? Like 4 times or whatever. I mean, they were always there.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think if you could have, injected some oxygen or, do maybe the tools that they have available nowadays with those boots and everything. And, maybe those guys would have had more gas in the tank and maybe they'd have more championships. But if I go to MacKinnon, I go like this, and I'm going to compare him to an all-time great that passed away this past year, Guy Lafleur. And I'll tell you why. Different styles of players. But I think that Nate came in with a lot of pressure of being the number 1 pick, right? And I think Guy Lafleur was the same thing. He was the savior of the Montreal Canadiens, and he was the next up-and-comer. And, this is kind of, if you look at Nate's start, obviously Joe had been gone now, and Peter had been gone, and they were still looking for, didn't work out with Matt Duchene or, they're good players, Paul Stastny, but no one was elite and then be able to take over a game. And if you look at Guy Lafleur back then, there's 2 factors for me. The first one is he came in with a lot of pressure and, not necessarily, he didn't really deal with it the right way, in the sense that if you look at his first 3-4 years, Nate, the production is okay.
It's fine.
It's fine. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And if you look at Guy Lafleur back then, it's the same thing. And then you have guys that are doing pretty good around the league. So back then you had Marcel Dion that was, scoring almost 50, and people are like, oh my God, they picked the wrong guy. You know what I mean? Like, and same thing with Nate. The first few seasons, you can, you look at Barkov, and remember there was Seth Jones, and you're like, oh, maybe they picked the wrong guy, and ultimately, they picked the right guy now, But so there's that factor right there of like a slow start maybe to their career. But then at me, it's the ability to take over a game, and I call that the ooh-ha factor. You know, like those guys are.
They make you say wow,
they make
for sure.
you say wow, and they make you stand up on your seat, or that goal against St. Louis a couple years ago in the playoffs. It's just not many people can make those plays. You know what I mean? Like even like Joe is not that type of player. You know what I mean? Joe scored. It was his wrist shot. You know, he didn't really have the ability to take over a shift like that, and I think that MacKinnon, when he takes over, it's pretty special, you know what I mean? And that's why I go to Guy Lafleur, you know what I mean? Like with the hair flying and everyone like getting on the top of their seat and hoo-ha, and you hear it in the building, and it's pretty amazing. And Nate's got that, and that's why I would compare him to Guy Lafleur. First round, you know, first overall pick, slow start, but guys that take over a game, and they really have that factor where they make you like, wow, what was that all about? The next day you talk about it at work, and you talk about it with amongst each other, and guys in the locker room on the bench are like, have you seen this? This is crazy.
It's, as Chad is kind of mentioning here, I think the one thing MacKinnon lacks to truly be considered an all-time great is his shooting ability. Not that it's bad.
Yeah,
but he produces his goals by volume a lot more than sniping all day.
Yeah, it is interesting to see a guy that's right in that baseline of around 40 goals per year.
Yep.
We're talking about, his shot's not that great. Because he's, percentage-wise, he's like a 10-ish%
I
shooter.
think it's a little under 10, yeah.
And he's had some really, really bad years. And in the last couple of years, he's had really slow starts to the year.
2 goals in December.
Before he absolutely catches fire, and you're just like, what the hell is happening right now? And like I think it's interesting because you say, yeah, he gets it by volume. Yeah, he leads the league in shots every year.
Yep.
You know, there are games we don't even blink anymore when, he has 9 shots on goal in a game.
And that's just normal.
You see that now out of another guy. You know, Nazem Kadri had a game when he was here where he had 10, 11 shots on goal one night. And we were like,
it's the best game of his life.
And like Nate, we're just like, we call it Wednesday.
Yeah.
You know, like it's so different. The world the way that we judge a Nathan MacKinnon now versus
5 years ago.
Still really good players elsewhere in the league. So yeah, it's the way that he produces shots, and like he throws like a lot of nothing shots at the net where it's like it's never a bad thing to shoot, but you know.
The one thing I can add to that too, if you're going to compare Joel Sakic's shot, you know, to Nate, obviously different.
That's arguably a top 5 all-time shot.
For me, the
shot,
best
man.
of all time. Like, I mean, Mike
is...
Bossy was in there, you know, but I think that, you know, what Joe is like. The one thing about Joe, and then playing with him a few years, is I don't think I've ever seen him miss the net. And when you don't miss the net, and I'm talking about practice, forget about games. You didn't miss the net in games, but you didn't miss the net in practice, and that's pretty remarkable. It's pretty amazing. So if I compare him to Nate or whoever nowadays in the league or in the Avs, you know, guys will take a lot of shot attempts, like you're saying, but sometimes they miss the net. And it's like, you know, and I know guys pick corners a lot more than they did back then. You know, like you missed the net back then. You weren't playing for a while. You know, I mean, like, you know, but, you know, it's a little different now. They want guys to pick corners, but guys like Joel, like, he never missed the net. It was amazing. And 5-hole was his big shot, right? And I know people talk about his top glove wrister, but if you go back on a lot of his goals were 5-hole. It's so different, right? It's so different, but hey, you're talking about, you know, unbelievable players here right now. You know what I mean? Whether it's past or present. I mean, MacKinnon is certainly going to be at the top of those discussions for sure in 15 years from now.
Yeah, so that's where I wanted to go next with MacKinnon is what would it take for him to start getting into an all-time great conversation? I think we all believe he's on a Hall of Fame path, but there's a pretty big difference between getting into the Hall of Fame and being a name thrown around with Joe Sakic, with a Wayne Gretzky, with that level of hockey player.
It honestly might just be like my kid brain. Having grown up, you know, as a child through
just as this next generation of children
Sakic
becomes
and
adults,
Forsberg era, but like, I have a really hard time seeing MacKinnon surpass Forsberg in terms of like what I think of as like a caliber of player.
We got to get like some 8-year-olds on and ask them how they feel about it.
You know, like I'm like,
you're right. Though.
Like
You're right. It's bang on.
Somebody find Blake and Eddie.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, that's.
Yeah, like I just like Forsberg. There's always the what if.
Yeah.
Which you're the thing about having blank spaces like that is that you fill them in with whatever you want.
Yeah.
And with Forsberg, you're like, oh, we could have filled him in with 100, like it's just raining 100-point seasons. You know, he gets 70 assists a year. He goes down as one of the all-time great playmakers, and we don't have a what if conversation. We have an oh my god, that was incredible. And with MacKinnon, you know, yeah, he misses 10 games a year, but so what? You know,
Still
like he's
puts up ridiculous
yeah.
numbers.
I mean, you look at he's been so close to stringing together like 4 or 500-point seasons.
It's literally like 4 or 5 points away from 3 straight.
Yeah,
So-
like he's so close to having that kind of consistent level of production that you almost never see in the NHL, except for guys like McDavid or Crosby. He's right there, but I think that look, he's right there. He's not across that line because I don't know that we'll ever look back and say that Nathan MacKinnon was a, you know, when we did the top 25 list last week, people who don't follow hockey were asking me, where's Joe Sakic all time in terms of hockey players? And I was like, I think he pushes top 10.
Pretty easily top 15 for sure.
Certainly
yeah.
top 20. We said, hey,
Oh, yeah.
no doubt top 20, maybe top 10 for some people, you know, whatever. I don't know that MacKinnon ever quite gets to that height. I think he's more like and like, boy, are you talking about splitting hairs here.
Yeah.
Between, oh, you're a top 40 player of all
Yeah.
time and a top 20 player of all time.
Yeah.
I think MacKinnon, for me right now, I think we would, if MacKinnon continues this on, it's probably more like I guess as a regular season player, top 40. But if the postseason stuff continues, it's got to count for something because he's been such a dominant postseason player.
Yep.
Every year of his career, he's been a point per game guy or way better than that. I mean, I think he's like 6th or 7th all time right now in points per game in the postseason among guys with 20 playoff games.
And
It's
Mikko's
a
one of
low
the
bar.
6 ahead of him.
So yeah, Mikko's right behind him. Mikko's at 9, and
Yeah,
I
there
think
you
McKinnon's at 6 or 7. One of those.
Yeah, they're right in there.
So we'll save the Mikko stuff for later.
Yeah,
But yeah,
we'll get
with
there, we'll
MacKinnon,
get there.
that's got to count for something. That a guy who's a point per game player in his career in the regular season is even better in the postseason.
I agree with everything you're saying. I would add to it the only difference, and I am biased like you a little bit. You know what I mean with
Sure.
Peter and Joe. I am. It just is. You know, it's just. I think it's human nature. It's not that I don't like Nate MacKinnon or Cale Makar or Rantanen.
Yeah,
It's just,
of course.
I'm older, and this is the guys I know, and this is the guys I play with. It's a little different. But are they in the same category? Absolutely. That's why we're talking about them, right? But I think that to get, like you said, like Rudo said, to get to that level, fair or not, I think it will depend here on the next 4 or 5 years of, you know, especially them being the leaders of the core. You know, the team success that Joe and Peter had is obviously above Nate's right now. You know what I mean? And I'm not blaming Nate because, like you said, he's been performing, he's been there.
Yeah.
But we'll see the next 4 or 5 years where they go, what's the number of playoff rounds that they've won? And I think then you can start comparing them to Joe and Peter.
So here's my next question with MacKinnon then, next 4 to 5 years. Eric, you're the resident McDavid stan on the pod, or the Edmonton fan at very least. Does Mac have a heart in him, or is McDavid too big of a roadblock for a little bit of that trophy cabinet filling?
I know. I mean, that's a good question. It's a fair question. I do believe he's got it in him because he looks like a driven human being, right?
No, for sure.
Of course, right? You know what I
Not
mean?
about that.
You know what I mean? And that's how you win, right? You don't win without that. You need an engine, and he's got the engine. Do I think he wins? Probably. Does that mean that he's got to bring it up a notch a little bit to get to McDavid? But then again, on the flip side, I'm a team guy too, so I'm like, hey, Nate's done it. They've won. McDavid hasn't done it, right? You know what I mean? It's kind of like, But yes, to answer the MVP trophy, I do believe he's got it in him to get there, and I think that he's got the cast around him too to make him get there. People forget about McDavid. Like, he's got Draisaitl. He's got, you know, there's some good players, and I understand they're top heavy and everything, but usually when he steps on the ice, he's with some pretty good players. You know what I mean? And same with Nate. You know, he's got a good cast around him.
We're about to talk about one of them.
Yeah, that's right. You know what I mean? So I do believe he wins a heart. He does. But I think to get to that status, it will have to be more, and fair or not, team success, in the playoffs and to be in that conversation with the Joes and Peter.
Better chance he wins a Hart or a Conn Smythe?
I right off the bat, I would say Conn Smythe. You know what I mean?
Me too.
I think so. I mean,
He's just a different beast in the playoffs. Yeah.
Well, and he's to win a Conn Smythe, he would very likely have to go through McDavid's Oilers again. And he would just need that kind of postseason. He just needs to keep having the kind of postseason he always has, right?
Look, you said it off the top of the show. The way MacKinnon is built with speed and power, it's like prototypical playoff power forward. It's like he's just absolutely built for that style of hockey in a way that very, very few players ever have been.
And there's a drive in there. Right, and I don't know him personally.
All you have to do is look into his eyes. You can see it.
There's a drive there, and I'll relate it to maybe an old Avs, player. Again, more from my era was Patty Waugh.
Sure.
I can tell you that. A quick story, in '96 they win in Florida. It's like, I don't know what it is, 5 a.m. I'm exaggerating, but it was
triple overtime. Pretty late. Yeah.
I flew in from LA, took the red eye. I haven't slept in like a day and a half, and I'm there for my family, for my my dad, and so I'm there with my brother, and then of course Krupe scores that big goal, and they go in there, and then I play for a different team. I don't want to go in the locker room. I really don't. You know what I mean? First of all, I'm jealous because I didn't win, and I want to win it, and we didn't make the playoffs. I'm like, boy, I got a ways to go. But so I'm sitting there. Of course, they come and get you. Like, no, get your butt in here. And I'm like, all right, fine. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm just hanging out in the training room, and again, they just won 30 minutes ago. And Patty's sitting on the chair there, and he's got a beer, and he's just sitting. I'm just sitting next to him because it's one guy I know, because I grew up with him in my house, and I'm telling you, when I talk about drive, you're talking about a guy that already had two cups in Montreal. This is his third one. Obviously, a crazy year with the trade, and it's been 30 minutes, and he's just sitting there, and everyone's going bananas in there, and he's just talking with me, and again, someone he's known for a long time, and we're talking, and all he's talking about is how they're going to repeat next year.
He's already thinking about the next one.
I'm telling you right now. I remember I was like, wow, this guy's nuts. Like, you know what I mean? Like, in a good way. He's like, wow, that's all he can think about right now is how are you going to do it next year. But those guys, that's how they are. They're special, and they got that drive. And I do believe MacKinnon's got that drive in him. Yeah. And I think that's why Patty liked him so much, right, in juniors, and obviously as his coach here and with the Avalanche.
Single-minded focus for sure.
Looking a bit like looking in a mirror in terms of that competitiveness.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, we do have a little bit of a competition going on with Breckenridge Distillery. They've got a couple of different whiskeys that you can go vote on at BreckenridgeDistillery.com. Get over there, go check it out for your chance to win a bunch of awesome prizes, including Broncos and Breckenridge Distillery swag. They have 2 different Broncos blends, Ed McCaffrey and Alfred Williams. Again, BreckenridgeDistillery.com to vote on those. And if you want to potentially win 2 tickets to a suite for the New Year's Eve game against the Chargers, you can go on Instagram, hashtag Broncos Bourbon, and post your favorite Broncos photos there with the hashtag. They'll narrow that down on December 1st, and then there'll be a fan vote from the 4th to the 10th of December. So make sure you're going to BreckenridgeDistillery.com/Bourbon of Denver Broncos to enter. Get those posts up on Instagram with hashtag Broncos Bourbon. Win yourself some sweet tickets. You can drink Breckenridge Distillery in a suite at Mile High Stadium, which, let's be honest, it just tastes a little bit better when you're in a dope suite. It's just the truth. Go check them out. Go to BreckenridgeDistillery.com today. You can order their products in all 50 United States and even get delivery from their website. Of course, you can also find them at your local liquor retailer as well. And then we're also brought to you by the folks over at Kind Love. So if alcohol's not your thing, totally cool. Get it. Maybe you want some weed instead, and that's where Kind Love comes in. You can go to kindlove.com and use code DNVR to get 25% off all of their in-store products. They're one of the OG dispensaries here in Colorado. They've been around since 2010. They've been doing it for a very long time. They also all grow their own stuff. It's all farm to table. They take care of you. They know where everything is sourced and comes from because they source it from themselves. They have a bunch of amazing products. AJ's big into their gummies. The Turbo Joint is maybe the most popular product through the DNVR staff. because the entire staff can smoke one turbo joint and all be chilling because that's how powerful it is. So
Had some of those gummies the other day. It was great.
there you go. They're the good stuff over from Kind Love. Go check them out, whether it be flour, gummies, or other products. Use the DNVR code to get 25% off. Use the QR codes on the screen right there, or go to kindlove.com to see their full ordering menu today. AJ, I'm gonna throw to you on this pick of the week for DraftKings here because you are the big tennis fan.
Yeah.
Who you got in the U.S. Open?
Men or women's?
Let's go women's.
Oh, of course. The one I don't have an answer.
Okay, men's then.
I mean, I will tell you for women's, Coco Gauff looks great.
There you go.
She looks great.
Go America.
But the Americans have had a phenomenal showing.
Yep.
On both men and women. I mean, getting 3 men to the round of
Been
16.
a long time.
Yeah, I think they said it hasn't happened since the early 2000s.
Yep.
Which, like, this has been like the worst period in American men's
Tennis in a long while.
like
yeah.
ever. Like the last 20, like when Randy Roddick retired, it was
Yep.
like, well, it's John Isner. And now,
And now
I mean,
he
well,
passed the torch right now.
yeah. Well, and like the Shelton Tiafoe match was incredible stuff. So,
Yep.
I mean, I still think men's. I mean, I'm not betting against Alcaraz. I'll take him over Djokovic.
That's fair.
I think that's the final. But Alcaraz is incredible. He can just run you to death. He's got every shot in the bag. I can't believe he's 20 years old. Like, it's insane to me that he is 20 and as good as he is.
Is he the next one?
Yeah, big time. Yeah, so I would take him for the men's, and then for women's, I mean, I guess I'm just going to be a homer about it and say go Coco Gauff.
I'm here for it. Whatever you want to bet on, you can do it with DraftKings Sportsbook. Life's more fun when you're in on the action. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code DNVR. New customers can get $200 in bonus bets instantly when they bet just $5 on college football. Only DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. Other bonus bets, expire 7 days after insurance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. We talked about Nathan MacKinnon as a volume shooter, but he has a running mate, and whether they're playing together or playing on separate lines, they're still running mates. Mikko Rantanen. Does he have the best shot on the Avalanche? Let's start there. Is he the best shooter currently in Colorado?
Yeah, come on.
Okay. Just checking.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I tend to watch at Family Sports in the morning all the time. And again, I go back to Joe earlier. This guy never misses. He never misses. He doesn't miss the net. And he's got that shot from the right side there. You know where it's going. And he doesn't miss. And he works at it. He works at his craft. And yeah, I would say, yeah, I agree with you. He's probably the best, most accurate, and the most, productive shot on the Avalanche.
And numbers-wise, he's a career, 16 or 17% shooter.
It's very high percentage.
Astronomical number. That puts you in all-time great territory.
Especially for a guy who scores as many goals as he does.
Right.
You see guys like Tanguay who shoot close to 20%, but that dude puts in 25 goals a year. He just doesn't shoot that much.
Yeah, he shoots 125 times,
Right.
and you're like, okay, he's should probably do it a little bit more, man. He got a pretty decent shot.
Here, let me start here.
Yeah.
Do we all think Mikko is on a Hall of Fame path right now?
Me, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I do.
I think the bigger question is, what will it take for him to be the best Finnish player ever? Because chasing down Jari Kurri and Teemu
Solani's going to be
Solani
tough
is,
to catch. Yeah.
those are a couple of guys that have pretty lengthy resumes when you walk through them.
600 plus, right? So,
long way to go. Put it that way.
and again, we talked about that.
He's halfway there.
It's consistency, right? You know
Of
what I mean?
course, yeah.
It's easy to have one good year, and it's not easy to have 12 good years. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think he's on that path. I'm a big fan of the Moose. I am.
Me too.
I think if you go back at, what was he, 10 or 11?
10.
10, that's a heck of a pick at 10. That's a steal. Over the
He's,
years.
funny enough, the best 10th
Since
overall
Teemu.
pick since Teemu Solani.
That's there you go. But it's funny because that's a steal at 10. It's easy to look back years later, but he's outstanding. He dominates a game, and I just think that I think you said it earlier about unique size and skill. It's almost not legal. I mean, it shouldn't be legal. I mean, it's not. Like, there's no way you should be that big and that skilled. Usually that's a combo that doesn't exist, and it sure exists with him, and that's why it makes him so unique. And of course we can keep talking about him for a while here, but I think that in the NHL, if you're talking about a guy that can play center, a guy that can play wing, a guy that obviously is deadly on the power play with that shot, a guy that's won, a guy that plays in all three zones. He plays the right way. He's not a cheater. And maybe at first, he had to learn a little bit, and that's why I like the fact that guys go in the American League. I like the fact that he went to San Antonio. And again, it's a European. It's a little different with the rules, right? If you're under 20, you're allowed to go in the American League, where a Canadian kid or American kid, they have to go back to their junior team. I'm not sure I like that rule, but that's another topic. But I think him going down there and learning his craft in the American League was huge for his development. And then, is he the best left winger in hockey? I'm biased. For me, the answer is yes. You know what I mean? Like, so that's, and again, left winger, whatever you want to put him.
Sure.
Is he one of the best wingers in hockey? Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a left shot. There you go.
I'm with you on it. My question, though, is, does he get too cute at times, and is that holding him back from becoming an all-time great? Many, many times, whether it be the chip shot thing that he tries inside of the net, or the one that he actually makes work semi-regularly is the bank-in goal off the back of the goalie.
He does love that.
And on one hand, it's a testament to his unbelievable skill. On the other hand, I do think he leaves some people wanting a little bit more in those situations.
It's me.
It's more than just you, but it is you.
Definitely me. He drives me crazy.
I love it.
You can just see, because when he's engaged, it's so obvious what a truly dominant player he can be. And then he also knows that he can shortcut his way through November through February. He can just cut as many corners as he can and score 2 points per night. And just the guy drives me nuts, because it is so frustrating, some of the lazy stuff that he'll do. But when he's not playing like that, he's an unstoppable monster of a player.
He is a monster. Like, if you look at last year, I don't remember if it was January, February. Everyone was hurt, and he was. For me, his MVP caliber there for 10, 12 games in the league. At least Nate was gone, right? I do believe Nate was. He was doing it by himself.
Literally, he scored like 6 straight goals across 4 games. He was the only guy scoring for Colorado.
And that's my point with him. I think he's a victim a little bit of his personality at times. Again, not a guy I know personally, but you can hear the guys talk, and he's a happy-go-lucky guy, and he's one of those guys that's just a fun guy to be around. He
doesn't have that MacKinnon serious factor for
that's
sure.
Right.
Yeah,
that's right. And then I think sometimes, and again, I always say that there's a kid that plays with my son, and he's 6'3". You know what I mean? I'm sorry, I lied to you. He's 6'6". He's been 6'3" and above since age 12, and it's like, I always tell him, you know what your biggest problem is? And he always looks at me, you know what? I'm always, your size. Your size is your biggest problem, because it looks so bad when you're not on top of your game, or if you're not really going all out. It looks worse than the guy that's 5'10" or whatever it is, because you stick out, you know what I mean, like a sore thumb. And that said, and I think it's a little bit of that with Mikko. So big and you got to remember, this guy logs minutes. And it's tough to play those minutes. And these guys play a lot and a ton of minutes. And just with his style, sometimes I do believe it makes him look like he's lazy. I think sometimes just he's got nothing in the tank. You know what I mean? And he's just trying to, again, when you have nothing in the tank, I think he's gotten better the last few years, especially in the playoffs, to realize that keep it simple when you don't have that, and then don't do the plays that drive AJ nuts. And I get that. I totally see it. I'm not debating it. And I'm sure it drives the coaching staff nuts too sometimes. You know what I mean? He's that player.
Well, look, to defend him a little bit, and I'm not fully on this side, but just to play devil's advocate, look at his career. His rookie year, his actual first full NHL season, he hurts his ankle in the rookie tournament, misses a bunch of time. You look at 21 going into the playoffs, he hurts his midsection ribs area, is not full healthy going into those playoffs and at the end of the season. I do think Mikko has learned a little bit to protect himself physically.
Going into the 22 playoffs, remember he was really
that was
sick.
A little bit different than injury,
but he lost
yes.
a bunch of weight.
And he was cruising around at the end of that season.
And so he was
for
like,
sure.
I'm not quite the tank that I normally am. And so he managed it.
Yep. So I do think there is a little bit of management there with Mikko. He understands how to keep himself healthy or healthy enough.
Yeah.
And then, look, there's no doubt we've seen it close to the level of MacKinnon in the playoffs. When the time comes, he shows up, and he is a monster, just like other fantastic players.
Yeah, I mean, he has 87 points in 70 postseason games.
That's ridiculous.
Joke, man.
It's wrong.
Like,
You know what I mean? It's wrong. It is. Like it's not right.
He's 14 and 12, 21 and 15, 13 and 10, 25 and 20, and 10 and 7 since that first postseason.
That's ridiculous.
And that's why, for me, I love him. I do. I do love the fact, like I said, you go back to a 10th overall pick. He's not a first overall pick, but he's so dominant. And then it's a little bit like, I'll go to Edmonton for a second. Everybody talks about McDavid, right?
Yeah.
Everybody talks about Nate. Everybody, you know what I mean? Next thing you know, like, there's a guy named Draisaitl, pretty good. You know what I mean? Like, he's pretty
okay.
good. And then it's the same thing with
Guy with an Art Ross and a heart in his cabinet.
that, you know what I mean? And then you hear McDavid, and I'm not saying McDavid's
Yeah.
not good. He's unbelievable. He's out of his planet. You know what I mean? Like it's
but
just,
these great players tend to have that 1-2 punch.
that's right. And then obviously, what's his name? The big moose there. He's that guy here. You tend to forget about him, because you talk about Nate, and then obviously we'll talk about Makar. But there's so many other guys.
Yeah.
And he gets lost a little bit in the shuffle, and I think. He doesn't mind that either. I don't think he's the guy that wants the spotlight. You know what I mean? So I think he's perfect in his role that way, and I think it just suits his personality.
I also think that he gets devalued because he plays next to MacKinnon so much, where people will casually just be like, "Oh, well, he plays next to MacKinnon. Anybody can do that." But you look at Artturi Lehkonen as a great example of this. Plays next to Nathan MacKinnon all of last season. Has a career year. He has 50 points.
Yep.
Right?
Mikko has double.
Right. And Mikko Rantanen has more goals than Artturi Lehkonen has points. And it's like, he was great in the 13 games that MacKinnon missed.
Yeah.
He wasn't that great that it makes up that difference between those two guys.
Yeah.
Like, could you look at a guy like Lehkonen and say that MacKinnon is pushing him across the finish line to a higher statistical profile than he would be otherwise?
Probably.
Of course. Is he doing the same thing with Rantanen? Very, very likely. Yeah. But also,
But pushing the
Rantanen
guy
is
from
so
90
good.
points to 100 points is a little different than
Rantanen
40 to 50.
is so good on his own that it's just the best making the best even better.
Yep.
Guys that are just meant to play together. This is not like Artturi Lehkonen is a lot more of the Chris Kunitz next to Sidney Crosby.
Yeah.
Yes.
Than in like now Evgeny Malkin is next to Sidney Crosby and anybody could do it. Like, no, these guys they're separately, they're incredible players. They are truly elite, best among the best.
I will say, and this is kind of going back to MacKinnon more than Rantanen, but that is one of the hallmarks of a great player. And we've seen over the last 4-ish, since MacKinnon's rise, he is that guy. You can throw anyone on his wings, and he will make them into a good player. He was doing it with Matt Calvert in 2018.
Yeah, I mean, there was a stretch where Logan O'Connor was there, and it worked for a little, for a week.
You make everyone around you better.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
And that's what, the Joes and Peter and then obviously Nate and, they make everyone around them better players. And it's a privilege to play with those guys. And it's not always that easy. And some guys can play with those guys and some guys can't, But if you go back to Rantanen, and there's something that I've always noticed over the years with Finnish players and Swedish players. There's something they do in youth hockey over there, because I tell you one thing, for the majority of the players that come in this league, like their hockey IQ and their knowledge of how to play the game at a young age and coming into the league when they're young is it's astonishing the way they play. They play so right. You know, look at MacKinnon. Look, they play the game the right way.
Yeah.
And I'm not bashing Hockey Canada or USA Hockey, or I'm saying that there's something they do different there. And we've talked about that with guys over the years, and it is a different type of training that, you know, they do when they're young, and you know, you go. That's why some teams send prospects in the Finnish league, you know, and then all the games are 1-0. You know what I mean? Like, you know, because it's so strategic and it's like a chess game, and you know, everybody kind of understands like where to go and how to go. So Rantanen, for me's got that in him, you know, and that's why I do believe that he is a 200-foot player. And he understands that game, but again, you throw that stuff in there with a shot, and
good things happen.
yes.
Well, and you're talking about making players around you better, and like, isn't that the argument going into this season specifically, with the way that the Avs are built right now? Isn't that the main concept behind maybe breaking up
Putting
MacKinnon
him on
and
the second
Rantanen
line,
and having
yeah.
him next to Johansson and say Nichushkin? And then you have Lehkonen and Duran next to MacKinnon, and it's like, you trust that Rantanen is going to elevate those guys on that second line because he is so good that he has now gotten to the point where maybe they're best served apart, certainly in the regular season, when you're just trying to get through 82 games to get to the real stuff. You know, isn't that part of the appeal there?
I agree, and then somewhere lost in the shuffle is you gotta overcome somewhere in the lineup the loss of Gabe, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I know it's been a year now. You know what I mean, like, but somewhere somehow, like last year, there was always that hope. Oh, he's coming back, or oh, okay, maybe another 4 weeks. Oh, maybe another month, or you know, he's gonna be there. But right now, it's a reality, right? So I think you're right. I think splitting up to, and they're big boys. You know what I mean? They can figure it out. You know, Sakic and Forsberg, they played with. I mean, I can tell you that Joe's plays with some stiffs on his left side for many years. You know what I mean? Me being one of them at one point for a while. And it makes you better. You know what I mean? And that's just the reality of it. And it comes with the pressure we talked about yesterday, and the money and you know, the status that they have within the league and their team. And superstars make people better. Mm-hmm. And if you're a superstar and all you do is complain to the coaching staff about who you're playing with, and you just want to play, it doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like, I've been with guys, and I tell you one thing, they don't care. They're like, give me anybody, I'll make him go. You know what I mean? Of course, you have preferences on some guys, but if you're in there just complaining, then you're not a superstar. You know what I mean? 'Cause superstars, they'll play with anybody. It'll make you score 10 this year for sure. Maybe not.
Hey, if they could make me score 1, that's Hall of Fame worthy, probably.
Just stand on the back door, put my stick down, and just wait.
Yes, sir. It could be done.
Well, if you are looking at a future as bright as MacKinnon and Mikko's, make sure you're wearing your Shady Rays. You can get yours today at shadyrays.com. They have a whole boatload of different styles, polarizations, all of those things. They're fantastic sunglasses. I really can't get enough of them. I've never been a big sunglasses guy, but it turns out I like not squinting and going blind. So sunglasses are pretty cool. And Shady Rays does a great job of that for a very affordable price. It's not like these expensive designer sunglasses, but the quality is just as good. It's been rated 5 stars by over 250,000 people. And the best part is, if you break them, lose them, or just plain don't like them in the first 30 days, you can send them back, and Shady Rays will replace them completely for free. So go check them out. Use code DNVR when you purchase. If you get 2 pairs or more, you get 50% off your order. ShadyRays.com, or if you're local, they have a brick and mortar in the Park Meadows Mall. And then once you got your cool sunglasses, take them out onto the field with Volo. Volo, the biggest social sports company in the country. You can go to volo.com/Denver to get in on the action today. Use code DNVR10 when you order to sign up for a league, or get the Volo Pass so you get unlimited drop-ins for $20 a month, and the DNVR10 code will get you $10 off. You can go hang out in pretty much every sport under the sun, from flag football to volleyball to badminton to, I don't think they have a highlight league. That might be a little bit too far, but they do have racquetball, so count it.
Yeah, I'd be willing to bet that Volo isn't running a league that requires you to sign waivers to play the sport.
Yeah, probably not.
Because there's a threat, such a high
You may
threat
die.
of serious injury. Seems unlikely that would be the world that Volo wants to
social
live
sports company, not a death sports company.
Not a super intense Not ultra sweaty like that.
But we have a kickball league going on, as well as a handful of DNVR folks in the pickleball league. So go in, get your action. If you want to try it out, you can get the beta pass for the Volo pass, which is just $10 a month for the first 3 months. Go have some fun. And then a lot of the Volo folks will always come down to the DNVR bar to have drinks, play some flip cup after their sports. So it's always a good time with Volo. Again, check them out, volo.com/Denver. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. Look, we saved the best for last. I don't want to take anything away from MacKinnon and Rantanen. Great players. We all agree they're on a Hall of Fame path. But Cale Makar built different. Do we all think that there is a real conversation when it's all said and done that Cale Makar may be the best defenseman ever?
Yeah.
It's
just that simple.
Every time that dude steps on the ice, it's just you don't even have to watch. You just know. You can feel it.
This is such a golden age of great young defensemen, with Makar and Fox and Dahlin and Heiskanen, the Hughes brothers, all these guys. They're all awesome. And as much respect as I have for all those guys and think that they are legitimately great.
They ain't Cale Makar.
Cale Makar is just a completely different caliber of player. I think that he is, if we're comparing this version of the Holy Trinity to the Holy Trinity Part 1, he's the Peter Forsberg, but so far with better health.
Yep.
He's such a unique talent, such a special player. And it's not just what he's capable of doing physically. It's the mental side of things. It's who he is as a person. It's the drive to win. It's the humility that he carries himself with, where he's always trying to get better. There's never a satisfied, like, I'm Cale Makar, I'm on the cover of a video game. I've won a Norris Trophy and a Conn Smythe and a Hobie Baker, and wow, look at this trophy cabinet, and I'm 24 years old and it's already completely full. Like, there just isn't that ego that he has. There's obviously confidence, but it's the combination of them that I think makes him so special, and why I believe that as long as health remains a minor factor in his career, I mean, I don't know that we'll ever be able to talk about anybody the way that we talk about Bobby Orr in hockey history, but I think if he ends up in a tiered pyramid next to Bobby Orr at the tip top of that thing,
wouldn't be surprising.
I just think that's where we're headed.
I agree. I mean, if you look and you're saying Bobby Orr, I remember back then Wayne Gretzky talking about Bobby Orr like the best player he's ever seen, play live. And I know he's always said Gordie Howe is the best player, but obviously Gordie Howe being in a different era.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like what we were talking about earlier, like in comparing different decades. And it's hard, if that's what or you were too young to remember. But Bobby Orr was special a little bit. I'm older in a sense, but I'm younger than the Bobby Orr era. For me, it's more the Paul Coffeys and Ray Bourque. And,
sure.
Yeah.
Ray. I mean, those guys dominating games but if you're compared to those names, I mean, but I'm not afraid to say like AJ and I know Rudo's not, but I do believe he's going to be the all-time greatest defenseman ever play the game, because it's special to watch, and you're watching it, and I'm in awe of him. I am. I'm not afraid to say it. I'll catch myself. And again, I've been around NHL rinks my whole life, but I'll catch myself at family sports walking by, and if he's there, I'm watching him. And it's almost like, crazy in a sense. I'm just like, maybe being a stalker or something. I'm just watching him, and I just do things that he does, and I'm just like, oh, this is crazy. How can you do that? You know what I mean? And his ability on his edges is what separates him from so many people. If you're talking about, Bobby Orr and Ray,
figuratively and literally,
like his edges are absolutely crazy. I mean, there's something you can see. He's got that stutter step. Like, I'm a winger, and this is a guy. Obviously, I'm covering in my own end, and I see this guy go sideways and dance on the blue line. I'm just having a heart attack, and I'm passing out. Like, there's no way you can. He makes people look foolish. Like,
he does.
He makes NHL players look dumb and bad. But at the end of the day, they're not dumb and bad. He's just that good.
It's probably not quite as stark a contrast as the way people think about Patrick Waugh revolutionizing the goalie position with the butterfly and all of that. But it's a similar in a sense of the things Cale Makar does on the blue line. You're already seeing, as you mentioned, guys like Fox, guys like Haskin. Defensemen in the league already are adopting those styles. And if you go down and look through junior hockey, every defenseman is learning those things now. They're imitating Cale Makar at every level of the game.
How do you find the next Cale Makar? Is you have Cale Makar and everybody adores him.
Yep.
Like I don't know my wife's brother's son. I don't know what that is in relation to me. His favorite player, huge Winnipeg Jets fan. Huge. Favorite player, it's Cale Makar. He wears number 8. Like the face that he makes anytime that I'm around him and he wants to talk about Cale Makar, it's just like there's tons of them. They're going to be all over Canada. They're going to be all over the United States. Kids growing up now watching Cale Makar wanting to be the next Cale Makar. And that's going to revolutionize the position over the next 20 years. You know, guys that are 15, not 8, want to be Cale Makar. And that's where you're talking about revolutionizing a position. It won't look the way that it did with Waugh, where you watch goaltenders in the 80s.
And it's nonsense.
And you're like, what the hell? And then you watch Waugh, and you're like, this is so much better. You even now you watch him and you're like, this still looks a lot more modern than you watching goalies in the 80s literally standing up and watching Gretzky like fling pucks on the ice like past him, you know, where you're like, there just wouldn't be a goal today. But he's going to change that position because I think NHL teams, and you can already see it. I don't know that this is as much a direct result of Makar himself or just the era we're in, but teams are already looking at offensive defensemen and saying, I would rather my team have the puck than the Eric Goodbranson type, you know, the Josh Manson type, the big, sturdy, physical guy that is miserable to play against and excels in his own zone, but may not be great at anything related with the puck.
Especially over the last year or two, I've kind of charged at the idea of the Avs are revolutionizing playing positionless hockey, essentially. And it's more of a like 4-1. Most lineups the Avs run still have one proper defensive defenseman in a sense. But even then, like Devon Toews will jump up into a play when
watching
it's
Devon
appropriate.
Taves regularly lead rushes when you don't think of him as an offensive defenseman who just averages 50 points a year now. It's obscene to watch. Like it's the way that the Avs play in particular. I don't know that a lot of coaches are going to have the balls to just tell all of their defensemen
to just send it
to complete. Jack Johnson, just do it. Like go get you some, my man. If you see an opening, do it.
Yeah.
So I don't know that a lot of coaches are going to have the stomach for that kind of high wire act, but I think it emphasizes in Colorado specifically how smart you have to be to play Avalanche hockey, to be able to play that fast and that aggressive. You have to pick your spots and you have to know what you're doing. Because when it goes poorly, it really goes poorly.
And all of this stems from a Cale Makar who that's the thing.
Yeah.
Unbelievable
He
skill,
sets that
unbelievable
tone.
skating, unbelievably intelligent. It has the ability to play physically. Like, where's the weakness? It doesn't exist.
Like it's defending right in front of his own net.
And that's what makes the Avalanche so successful too. Is you got to remember it's about 30 minutes a night where this guy absolutely controls the game.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the other team is chasing. You know what I mean? And so for half the game, you know that when this guy's on the ice, you're not touching the puck. I mean, because usually, you know, and that's probably why he's not, like you said, maybe not the best defender because he probably doesn't have enough reps. He's never.
40% of the time, the other team has the puck.
And he's a combination. And I love the fact that you just said Waugh and revolution. Revolution of goaltending, and obviously him as a defenseman. But you know, if you're going to compare this guy, like I always said, like he skates, he makes rushes like Bobby Orr did. You know, from highlights from back then. He's got the shimmy. move that only him had. And I know people are trying to copy him now, but he's got it down like where nobody else is close to him.
Arguably the best shooting lane creator in the NHL.
Exactly. And then, I'm talking about Brian Leach again. This is a guy I played with. For me, I call it, oh my God, like I called the most underrated player that I ever played with. People are like, what do you mean underrated? He won a Collins final. I'm like, underrated. This guy's so good. Like I had no idea he was that good. And then for me, it reminds me of he's just a quiet leader, good guy, always happy, and he has that move on the blue line, rush the puck or maybe get pucks through like Ray did.
Yep.
So you compare like his IQ in the offensive zone of Sandis Ozolinsh. You know what I mean? Like I'm just saying, if
you're
you
pulling a lot of parts from a lot of really good players,
it's unbelievable. And then that's why he's unique, and that's why I'm not afraid to say he's going to be the greatest of all time. And I know you're not afraid either.
Yeah.
And it's because when you combine that, he is that good and that comparable to all those guys, and the rest of his game is better than all those guys. So it's like, yeah, I'm confident. I can say that again, health-wise and everything, and keep going. And then team success will lead this player to be something special in the history of Denver, Colorado sports. Because and the biggest word for me with him is humility. Like it's amazing because you almost want him to be cocky because you're like, man, you're that good. You should be allowed to be cocky. It doesn't exist. You know what I mean? Like it's like you shouldn't be allowed to be cocky.
It's almost a little annoying to talk about something transcendent that he does, and he just shrugs it off and he's like, I got lucky, or the guys around me really did a great job on that play, and you're like, bro, you just danced 3 guys and went top shelf on a guy that'll be in the Hall of Fame someday. Like, it's okay to dab yourself up a little, and he just won't do it.
I'm going to cut you out there, but on that point, like Forsberg was a lot like that.
Yep.
He'd be like, oh, you're going to eat after the game. And it's like, oh, I was so bad. And then you're like, buddy, we won 3-1. You had 2-1. You know what I mean? Like, you were pretty good. Like, and he'd be like, oh, no, I was bad. And, it's almost like, what? If you were bad, that must have been really awful.
The thing is, I think that almost creates more impressive moments on the rare occasion where Makar does something like the Chicago goal a couple years ago, and you see him actually, like, get pumped about it. You're like, oh, that was actually, like, something special.
Like when McDavid dances all the Rangers and then scores, and you see how amped up he is, where it's like, even he knows in that moment
that
how
was
special
pretty
that
dope.
was. Yeah.
So it just goes to show players like that are on a different level of like, that's the bar for them to celebrate.
Well, we're talking about revolutionizing. You talk about that shimmy move, and I've always compared it to Allen Iverson's crossover because it wasn't like Allen Iverson invented the crossover in the NBA. He just did it in such a way that nobody else ever
made it
had.
Undefendable. Yeah.
And then what happened? An entire generation grew up watching Allen Iverson destroy the NBA.
Started doing
with
that,
the crossover, and now they're all great at it.
Yep.
And I think that you're going to see that shimmy move that he does. An entire generation of NHL defensemen is going to come up and be like,
we just do this
we
now.
can all try to do an imitation of this. We can do a form of this, and it's just going to be part of the skill set.
And sometimes it becomes problematic with like youth hockey, like you're saying, because it's a copycat thing, right?
Yeah.
So you want to do what Cale Makar does, which I believe is unstoppable. If I'm a winger, I'm standing still there, and he's doing that move. There's no way I can't defend it. I don't know anyone that can.
Like, how do you? Like, if you skate at him, he skates around you. If you stop and stand still, he skates around you.
And that's where
I say
that's why I say it's problematic, because now you got those kids now. They're like, oh, Cale Makar does it, and then you're like, hey, maybe it's not the right play right there. We gave up a breakaway, and he's like, but Cale Makar does it. And I'm like, I know, but you're not Cale Makar.
But when Cale Makar shimmies, he shimmies out of the way. You get run over at the blue line.
Yeah. Well, and we've seen a couple of guys try to do it where they've got a big winger that's bearing down on them, and they'll try and dance that guy, and the winger just goes through them and takes the puck, and it's like, it sucks to not be Cale Makar.
Yeah. That's it.
It's not fair.
You ain't Cale, buddy.
That's why we're talking about him.
Exactly right.
And like 4 years in the NHL, and he's already been as dominant as he has.
It's ridiculous.
You add another 10 years to this, and it really, like, I think 10 years from now, we have that conversation.
Oh, I'm with you.
Assuming relative health and all of that.
Yeah,
but
and I doubt the three of us are still doing this podcast in 10 years.
Probably not.
But if we are, we're going to be able to pull this episode and be like, remember when we talked about this? But also, I think we're going to talk about it a lot moving forward, because Cale Makar he is the defining defenseman of this generation, and he's going to force his way into a Nick Lidstrom, Brian Leach, Paul Coffey, Bobby Orr conversation.
Yeah.
And I think the difference, too, between Cale Makar and other players we talk about, there's one thing. I think we talked about generational, like, you I don't want to say defend your generation, but you're protective of your generation. And, you know, like you're saying about Sakic, Forsberg, which is totally normal. But I think with Cale Makar, you see the older generation. I can tell you, for example, my dad, like, that was his favorite player. He was like, wow, I'm in love with this guy. And as soon as he got on the ice with that Calgary series, and he was just like, wow, this guy's amazing. And I think guys are not afraid. Like, I'm an older guy, and I defend the older generation with Wayne and those guys. And
yeah, of course.
I'm not afraid to say Cale Makar is going to be the greatest one. You know what I mean? And I think that's what separates him a little bit from these other guys.
I think it almost clouds the judgment of the younger generation too, having experienced this with Forsberg and Sakic. It took me a good portion of my adult life to realize just truly how good they were.
Yeah.
Because, like, during my teenage years, there were a lot of really good players that I watched and be like, yeah, but they're not Sakic. Like,
right. Well, and the world was so much bigger back then.
Yep.
You know, the television exposure to all the other great
significantly
players,
more minimal.
You might get to see those guys play 3 or 4 times a year.
Yeah.
And then you would be reliant on them to see them in the postseason, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now you can see everybody every night, and that Cale Makar still separates in that way. I think is meaningful, where you're able to sit and watch it. You can go on Twitter and you can watch highlights of the best players doing the craziest shit every single night. You can just go on there and do that. It's just readily available to you, and he's still. It's completely different,
right? It's still that good. Even with that much more availability in comparison, it's not. I see the guy arguing in our chat for Yossi over Makar for the Norris.
He's not arguing anything. He's just saying stuff.
I know, but I wanted to talk about that because we all went into the end of that season thinking that vote was going to be pretty close.
It ended up.
It wasn't that close.
Oh, yeah, it wasn't that close. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
It ended up. I mean, it was pretty close in terms of I think Yossi ended up with more first place finishes or first place votes,
but Makar had more.
All of Makar's votes were first or second, and Yossi's one.
He had a bunch of fourth and fifth.
That was the stack of it. Was that Yossi's spread was wider, and Makar was
really
just one or
wasn't
two.
that close.
And it ended up being like an okay margin. You know, it's not comparable to others like Erik Karlsson this last year, where it was he smokes the field. Usually it's pretty clear cut by the end. That one was tough. Had Yossi gotten to 100 points, I think they would have given it to him. He didn't, and Cale Makar did it on a top team. And then I know that the voting took place beforehand, but then going into that playoff series and watching them head to head, Cale Makar kicks the shit out of the Predators, and Roman Yossi had that one really nice goal.
One play,
and was on the wrong end of a number of plays in the defensive zone.
Cale Makar is winning games in overtime
on a play where that starts with the Roman Yossi block.
Yeah,
and then Roman Yossi's literally on his knees looking up at Cale Makar
watching
for
the
that
game
winner.
end.
Yeah, like it was a perfect encapsulation of that Norris race. Pretty close, dude, but you're just not Cale Makar.
All right. We do got to wrap this show up. We are brought to you by Breckenridge Brewery, the official beer of DNVR. You can get 8 different kinds on tap down here at the bar or find it anywhere in the 50 United States. Use your local liquor store. Check the Breck Beer Locator online at breckbrew.com to find it near you. This is always a fun conversation. We are very lucky to be able to talk about players that are as good as a Makar, as a MacKinnon, as a Mikko.
There's like 5 or 6 franchises that exist that have never had a player as good as Cale Makar.
So
maybe even Nathan MacKinnon. Like,
cherish it.
Yeah. Just so special to see him. And knowing that, you know, the Avs will do whatever they have to do to keep that guy.
Also, if you want to keep up with the Avs, Megan was down at Family Sports today checking out the captain's practices. I know she posted about everyone who was there, so go follow her on Twitter and all of us as well. You can follow DNVR_Avalanche to keep up with all of us out there. Be sure to like and subscribe here on YouTube. That helps us out a ton. But we are out of here for today. We will be back with Megan tomorrow to talk top line value. We're comparing the Central Division's top lines. I think it's actually a pretty interesting conversation when you start getting into the money value on some of these teams' top players. So tune in for that, and we will talk to you tomorrow.